Can You Beat the Computer is an engaging way to create ownership within your students. So here's how it worked. What students did is they focused on writing. Writing was a very difficult standard that students often show weakness in. And so with this, students were encouraged to brainstorm. However, they were not kind of forced, they were just, again, encouraged to do so. And so right here is a Kami document that allows students to write out their ideas. There's also helpful hints along the side to support them if they got stuck and needed a sentence starter to really help them. You could also save these sentence starters to your annotation bank. And if you're using ClassView, you could then drag and drop them just to the students that need them. So maybe I was performing this assignment and I went into my Google Classroom. I assigned that assignment to my students, and then I didn't want all of them to have those sentence starters. I could again just come in here. I'm going to grab this example, click on student work, and go over to class view. Once I'm in class view, I can grab that sentence starter from my annotation bank, and I can post those sentence starters based on what my students need to support their scaffolding. So I love to use ClassView with this Kami activity to really support the students that need those additional scaffolds, because some of my students don't need those. But again, some of my students really need those scaffolds to help them get started. I'm also able to view their work in real time when they are using ClassView. After students organize their ideas on these graphic organizers, and again, for this pre-assessment, I just wanted to see what my students could do. So we came back to this graphic organizer after my students got the results. But some of them did use this first round just because they have been taught, they've been given the scaffold throughout the writing process, throughout the year. And again, we did this activity in the spring. So what students did is, again, they were kind of encouraged to brainstorm, but not a requirement. They then wrote. And what they did is they had another Google Classroom assignment and they typed their responses on this document right here. And what was happening is this area was blank, and students had to read these passages, answer this prompt. So you can see here are 3 quick student samples of this activity. And so what then happened after students wrote, they then got feedback. This is where I collected all of these written responses and took it over to ChatGPT. You can see my conversation with ChatGPT here. On this Google document, this is a prompt, and I borrowed this from Jeremy, who really helped me kind of think through how to organize and what I needed to prompt and ask ChatGPT for a response. And so again, you can see here that I've asked the chat to respond, and then at the very end, it populates a feedback score for my students. I took this last part and copied and pasted. Once you finish this first prompt, what you can do is you can just insert essay after that. So it goes pretty quickly after you put the first one in. The first one does require all of these prompts. It requires the writing prompt, the articles, the rubric, and the essays. Then you're able to just take this and copy and paste the essay, and you're able to get those additional student samples results within your document. So I pasted and copied and pasted that response from ChatGPT onto this document. So right here, I just went in, and as soon as it gave me the feedback, I copied and pasted it and added it to my students' responses. Once students had feedback on their document, we then revised. So what we did is we tried to figure out, how do we beat the computer? This student right here got 4 out of 10. So we wanted to figure out, how does this student up those points to beat the computer? The computer is scoring you. So how do we beat it? No, student number 2 received a 3 out of 10, where student number 3 received a 7.5. And so what I did is I took these 3 documents and I clicked the Kami extension. And once I clicked that Kami extension, I used a tool called Split and Merge. And on Split and Merge, I then took this Google document or this Google Drive symbol, and I added those 3 Google documents from my Can UV the computer, these 3 samples. So I've got student 1, student 2, and I have student 3. I'm going to hit select. Once I get those 3 check marks, I'm ready to move on to the next page. You can see here all of those 3 documents. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to go to merge mode. And I wanted to merge all 3 of these together. And then I could export all of these right into Kami. And what my students were able to do is they were then able to see each other's writing responses right after each other. So what Split and Merge does is it merges those 3 separate documents together. So as a class, we could try to figure this out to beat the computer. I did remove student names, so that way students didn't know unless they shared that information with their class. A lot of students were very interested and invested in what they could do to beat the computer because we kind of gamified it. We added, what is it that made that 7.5 a 7.5? And rather than dragging and dropping, I just went to merge mode. It merges all those documents together, exported it, took it to Kami, and now what my students could do is they were able to leave feedback using audio, text, video on 5 different student samples to figure out if they could take the feedback and if they could help this student beat that score. Once they gave that feedback to that student, the student then went back to their original document and they listened to the feedback. They thought about it. They read what ChatGPT said about their feedback. I encouraged them to use this graphic organizer where they could try to make their responses even stronger. And then what we did is they just wrote their essay down here, copied and pasted it again to ChatGPT to see if their score from their first round improved to that last round. My students were so invested that they were so excited to share their scores and their improvement with their classmates. It also made it so students were able to see, why is it that this document scored a 3, where this document maybe scored a 4, or whatever it was. My students were able to focus and really think about what was it that made these different scores appear within the computer. How is that 4 different than this? So they were really looking and really considering what was taking place, what feedback the computer was giving to make those incredible connections and corrections. So again, students brainstorm first. That was optional on the pre-assessment. They then wrote their response right here in this document. Once they wrote that response in that document, they then got feedback from ChatGPT. I just took their documents, copied and pasted it using my prompt, and then I copied and pasted their scores back onto their document. Once they got feedback, they revised. Students then had their assignments. I've used Split and Merge. I merged those documents together, and then they had everything in one document where they could review their classmates' feedback to figure out how they can beat the computer. Students left comments, audio, and video responses. After that, students revised, republished their work. I sent it off to ChatGPT again, and they were able to compare their pre and post score to see if they were able to beat the computer. And we were able to realize some really impactful strategies from using this activity with my students. So give it a try.